All right, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight. This is the Life Launch Center's parenting workshop. And, Life Launch Centers, it's all about stronger families and stronger futures. Tonight, we are talking about summertime parenting. And it's no joke. I mean, it is, we're in the thick of it. We're already into summer here, a couple of weeks. And I have 8 kids, and boy, we're already feeling the summertime parenting crunch. And so we thought this was kind of an appropriate topic to address. And, a little bit about ourselves. So my name is Joe Newman, and I work with Life Launch Centers. I'm the business development director. And like I mentioned, I have 8 kids. I've got a background in human development and family studies, and have the opportunity to host these webinars or these workshops. And tonight with us, we've got Laraine Murdock, who is our one of our therapists here in the St. George Center. And so, Lorraine, maybe take a minute and introduce yourself and a little bit about your background.
Okay. I'm Laraine Murdock. I have been in the mental health field for the past 18 years. I've done different aspects. One of the first things I did was helping families that had a child with disabilities, helping them find resources and services. Then I went back to school for a while, got my MSW, and then I also received a master's in sociology. And I started teaching for a while, and then I decided that I wanted to work in the field again, and I worked for Child Protection for a few years as a supervisor, helping families reunite. And then more recently, I've worked the past 5 years as a therapist in residential treatment, specifically working with children on the autism spectrum. I also have 5 kids of my own that I have 30 years of summers with, trying to figure out what was successful and what was challenging. When my youngest was born, my oldest was 12. So that's my 30 years of experience with summertime with children.
That's awesome. That's beautiful. And yeah, sometimes that personal experience gives us some of the best education, doesn't it? Just in case anybody, hasn't seen or realized that we do these workshops every month. And in case you missed last month's, you can jump on our website, and there's the parenting workshops link that you can see all sorts of different topics, hot topics for parents these days. And so if you've missed them, then you can pick up the recordings there, as well as pass this one on to any of those that you feel like would benefit from it in the future. So let's go ahead and jump into this. So summertime and happy families. So, I mean, this is what we'd love for it to look like for all of us, right? It's just walks in the park and, sharing the wisdom with our kids. Tell us, Lorraine, a little bit about summertime and happy families and what you do to try to have something happen like this.
Okay, so actually what I'm going to say today actually applies to whether it's summertime or during the school year, but I think it particularly applies in summertime because the first couple of weeks of summer, we're all kind of like happy to have a break from the routine of school and just kind of take it easy. But as we hit about that 2 or 3 mark, we begin to maybe our children get a little bit bored, or they might even be a little bit more impulsive, or maybe get into trouble a little bit because we've lost those routines.
Man, I definitely noticed that. And we kind of did that on purpose. We wanted like that first week to be like their, yay, it's summertime, celebration, and kind of give them a little bit of a break. But man, behavior just like starts tanking that second week. And yeah, I totally hear what you're saying. You've got to do something about
it. And so another point that kind of is important in our day is that the family structure has also changed. There's many types of family. There's the blended family. There's the grandparents raising grandchildren. There's the nuclear family living in different houses. There's the divorced family living in the same house. So in a survey, 8 out of 10 people said that families actually feel like their family is stronger today, but that they're overwhelmed by the chaos in that family life. So we wanted to give you some idea of how to manage the chaos of our modern family life. In 1986, there was a business model called the Agile Development. And if you are in business, you might be familiar with that. But in 1986, we had some researchers that applied that to family life. And what we've learned from that model, we can actually learn in the family life. And what it's looking at is not just like managing from the top down, it's managing from the bottom up, which means looking at what your children have to say and asking them what works. And just a little bit more about the Agile management. It breaks projects into smaller pieces, which are prioritized by the team in terms of importance. The Agile project promotes collaborative working. The project reflects, learns, and adjusts at regular intervals to ensure outcomes that result in benefits. And the Agile method integrates planning with execution that allows an organization to create a working mindset that helps the team respond effectively to changing requirements. I think everything I just read describes the modern family, that changing as your kids grow older, it's constantly changing and adjusting. So they came up with some ways to help the family apply this model. And the first one is the 20-minute family meeting each week. And according to research, this actually revolutionized like some of like the chaos that was happening in these families. So in this 20-minute family meeting, 3 questions are asked. What worked well this week? What didn't work well this week? And what will we agree to work on next week? And what is agreed to work on is actually come up by the family as a group, and the rewards and consequences are also put out there on the table. So such as like everybody is going to do their chore in the morning. And if that doesn't happen, then the consequence might be like 5 minutes of TV time taken away for something not being done. So that the children know up front like what their reward is and then what their consequence is. Actually, working in residential treatment, we did this model, and a lot of parents would ask, like, how did you transform my child? Like, how did you get him to do chores when I couldn't get him to get out of bed? And it's this same model. We had what we call the process group. And each week we would ask the students on the dorm, like, you know, what's working here? What's going well? And so they would let us know what's going well. We asked them what's not going well, and they would let us know, well, you know, somebody's not doing their chores and somebody keeps talking in line. And then the kicker question is we would ask them, okay, what solution do you have? Because a lot of times the solutions are already known by the people that are actually in the thick of this happening. So, for example, it would be like, well, if everyone will do their chores without complaining and older students will help the younger students with homework, then we can have extra time outside in the afternoon, or we can get an extra item at the student store. So I know that this worked really well in residential treatment.
So it sounds like really what you've got to do is be really proactive with it. Like you've got to be able to set kind of the rules or the boundaries up front. And, you know, maybe not that you have to have all the answers like right at the beginning of summer or whatever, like the program's adaptable, but be really clear about the communication. Like, okay, this is what is expected. This is the outcome when we do that. And if we don't do that, this is the consequence. And really address like all the different things that'll come up during summertime that are different than when they're in school. And, you know, so how often do they recommend having these family meetings?
Weekly 20 minutes. And part of it is similar to our problem solving method that we teach here at Life Launch. It's actually they're coming up with things that the family needs to work on. So everybody will put out ideas that are important to them. And then as a whole, the family will work on 2 things that week. And what are these 2 items that the family needs to work on? What are the rewards and what are the consequences? Rewards can be natural, such as like, well, if we all complete our chores, of course, we're going to have, maybe TV time or outside time. It doesn't have to be like the big, like, oh, well, we're all going to go out and buy new toys or something. This is really logical consequences.
Like
and
if we get our chores done fast, then we'll have time to go to the pool or whatever, right? But if you don't, then we're not going to have time to go to the pool. So it's kind of up to you guys. What do you mean by natural consequences?
Yeah. So like in the Agile business model, teams manage themselves, which we find out that the families start to manage themselves. The children have buy-in to, what is happening in our family life. The next part of this is the power of the check mark. How many of you will start your morning or go to work, wherever your work is, and you have a checklist for yourself? And some of us love the checklist, some of us don't, but I actually find a checklist really helpful because I can see what I have to do during the day, check it off as I go, and then I can kind of see, well, what will have to wait till tomorrow because I ran out of time today. So we like the check mark, but we've found that kids are in heaven with the check mark. They actually really like having a daily list. And this can be individualized for each of your kids. It's like we know that all of our kids have different abilities, different things that they struggle with. So we have a slide that shows some different examples. It could be a simple Post-it note checklist, like you move a Post-it note from to do to working on it to accomplish, or it can be your traditional, I need to get up and take a shower, brush my teeth, do my morning chore, get my breakfast, put my dishes in the dishwasher, whatever your family life looks like. It really does help a child to have that checklist.
And I love how some of these checklists, they're like really graphical, and some of them are more like spreadsheet, like it's, it seems like it would apply to different age groups, whatever you have to do to be creative to kind of give them that tool for them to be able to check stuff off their list.
Right. And research has shown that the Agile method can work as early as like you said, it can be a picture chart of like you brushing your teeth and then moving it over to the doing and to the done list. So it really is adapted to the age of your children.
Honestly, it's like they're used to this kind of stuff during the school year, right? I mean, school or education provides similar kind of methods to help keep their kids, the students on track in a progression. And so it's not really all that, unrealistic that it would work at home too.
Right. And another thing too is that this is really a helpful method for the parent that works in the home or works outside of the home, because you can leave the list there for the child. You can have it like through texting with our, we have so much communication available today that this can work whether you're in the home or outside of the home.
I love that. Yeah, it's very adaptable to the variety of family structures that exist today. So that's great. Another point that you had kind of brought up in our preparation was telling the story.
This is actually one of my favorite parts. It's like, so we need a bedrock and we need to preserve the core. And so you'll find that companies have their mission statements and they have their value statement. And that's something that we need to do in the family too. And some of the research behind that is that research from the Family Narrative Lab shows that children and adolescents who know more of their family's stories show higher well-being on multiple measures, including higher self-esteem, higher academic competence, higher social competence, and fewer behavioral problems. So how do we start telling our family stories? And Marshall Duke and Robin Fibish, I don't know how to say that last name. They developed the Do You Know scale, and it's a 20 question scale of kind of ways to tap into your family stories. And it's not like you need to go out and ask your children all of these questions at once, but as they naturally come up, it's like, do you have a time, like, do you eat a meal together? I know that research shows that eating meals together also has healthier families, but as our lives become more chaotic, we have to be flexible. Is that eating dinner together, eating a lunch together, or is it eating a breakfast together? But when you have these times together with your children, have these conversations, children really thrive by knowing that, like, hey, mom or dad struggled and this is how I got through that. So the first question is like, so this really made me reflect in my own life. Do you know where your mother grew up? So my brother actually grew up in Portsmouth, Virginia, and my father grew up in a small town in the White Mountains of Arizona. So you wonder, like, well, how did these two people meet? So after college, my father had joined the Navy, and he was on an aircraft carrier, and he sailed around the Horn of South America up, and his ship was stationed in Norfolk, Virginia, which is the city next to where my mom lived. And the sailors would come in and attend the family dances. And so my mom and my dad met in Virginia on one of those family dances. But as I was thinking about that story, I thought, well, I wonder, like, did they write letters? Did he ask her to marry him right then? They didn't really have that good of communication back then. So it made me realize how much I don't know and how much more that, I really could know about that. Another great question. Oh, go ahead.
So it's crucial to kind of create these opportunities where you can engage your kids in these kind of questions, these discussions about, where we're from, where we met. I love some of these, like, do you know the source of your name? Like that's a really personal one for the child, where it's not necessarily us telling a story about our own history, but it involves them too.
Yeah, you can have these times set aside to have these discussions, but also look for organic opportunities to bring it up. If your child is struggling with something, maybe you can tell them about a time that you struggled. And I'll give you an example. So one of these is like, do you know some of the jobs that your parents or your grandparents held when they were young? And I remember when I was 16 years old, and this memory is kind of ingrained in my mind because of a couple of reasons. I actually applied for my first job, and that was at McDonald's. And I remember one of the things I did is I was so nervous that I locked my keys in the car, and I didn't notice that until I was done with the interview. And so I had to, when I was done with the interview, I had to call my dad, and my dad was angry, and I remember him yelling at me. But and then another thing, I actually didn't get that job, and I was thinking back then, the guy that I interviewed with told me, he's like, I'm not going to hire you because in 2 weeks you're going to be somewhere else and have a better job. And I remember thinking, no, I just want this job. Please hire me. And then I did. In 2 weeks, I was actually working at a local clothing store. So I guess the guy, in the hindsight, the guy saw more potential in me, but I just wanted that job so bad. So the irony of this is that, so one of my first jobs was working in a clothing store. But when my mother was 18, one of her first jobs was also working in a local clothing store. And she told me that she would save her money from that job so that she could buy some sweaters for herself. And she kept those sweaters. And now today, I've been able to pass those sweaters on to my daughters. So those are the actual sweaters that my mother bought when she was 18 years old.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Really bringing it home, tying the generations together.
So these questions are really, really fun to, look down through, and, it's even fun. So I was on vacation recently. My children are all young adults now, and I was asking them these questions because I wanted to see like how well I had passed down the information. And because I have 5 children, I can do like the math quickly. Like, well, only 40% of them knew like what my first job was, and so it is kind of fun, to see what your children know in some of these areas. They may know more than you realize, as if when they're listening to grandma or grandpa or you tell a story.
And there's a lot of questions there. We'll make sure to post them on the web page that this recording goes on, as well as these other pages and resources that we're referring to.
So that's like the last point that I want to bring up. If you ever want to look up the Agile Family Model, there's a lot of information out there on it. And a lot of it we actually teach here at Life Launch Centers. It's like, we teach like our core values, and that's what drives our goals. And this is kind of where this mission family statement comes. Every family should have a mission statement to define your core values. Create a family mission statement. What's important to you and your family? And so this is one that I just found on the internet, but I like it because it talks about both like the struggles and the successes. So in this family, we will laugh, play, tell the truth, we have faith, work hard, treat others with respect. We are a team. We fall and get back up. We make mistakes and say, I'm sorry. We do hugs, kisses, stick together, love, celebrate, have hope. We learn, we have adventures. We pray for each other. We serve each other. We do our best. We are thankful. We keep our promises. We communicate, forgive, and show grace. Our home is a safe place where we will always belong. And another one of the things that we teach here at Life Launch Centers is the value of connecting with people. And I think that keeping connections with your families is one of the strongest connections that you'll have in life. If some of you are the older, if you think of like how many people do you still know from high school, yet, are you still connected with your family? Most people are still connected with your family. And I think without social media, we probably wouldn't be connected with maybe, some of our friends from high school or from college. I mean, social media is nice for that connection, but it's those face-to-face connections that really mean a lot. So I wanted to end with a quote from Bruce Feller. He's one of the researchers that's done a lot of research on this Agile family system. He says, there's still plenty of parental control, but we are giving them practice becoming independent. Children who plan their own goals, set weekly schedules, evaluate their own work, build up their frontal cortex, and take more control over their lives. So ultimately, if we are trying to raise successful children, if this is one way, as we show them the ropes and some of the ways that they'll have to have structure in their own life and be part of that, this is one way that we can help them become successful young adults.
I love it. So I wanted to pull up a couple of the tools that we had put up on screen, just to explain kind of how we do this, because I know we just like blazed through a ton of information there, and I want to make sure everybody has the opportunity to understand how these tools work. So first of all, this My Core's Values. This is a really valuable and helpful worksheet. I mean, you can make up your own, but essentially what it is it helps us define a whole bunch of different values, right? So you can do this individually. You can do this with a specific relationship between two people to define the values in that relationship, or you can do it in a family system like we're talking about, where you as a family will come together with a list similar to this, and you circle all the things that are important to you, right? So loyalty or openness or peace or, and everybody gets to have input in that. And then you can narrow it down. So maybe there's like 30 things that are already circled there. Then you say, all right, what are our top 10, right? Or maybe what's our top 5? But you narrow it down to a point where then those core values become kind of the framework for when you put your mission statement together, right? And then you can kind of fill in the blanks of some of the other fun things that you like to do, or however you want to, put it together so it becomes a working document like we see here in this particular example. And sounds like, Lorraine, you guys did a lot of that, and it helped you build connections, which essentially is a major part of like what we teach here at Life Launch Centers with the resilience model. As you can see, building connections is like the final step and really the healing process in bringing people together, helping them get through difficult times together. And so that's what that mission statement, that's what those core values do, is unify the group. And I couldn't pass up the opportunity to bring up some of these pictures because obviously, Lorraine, you've had some great success in doing these kind of things. These are some fun pictures. Tell us a little bit about these pictures.
I spent the last weekend with my children in California, and their personalities today are the same ones they had growing up. On the right, my oldest son is giving me a hug, and then my other son is doing the same funny face in the door as he's photobombing that photo. And just, building these stories and having these connections. It's they still call mom when they want to figure out some life decision. And so, the memories that you're making, the things that you're teaching your children today are going to help them as young adults. And those young adult years can be some of the most difficult as they're trying to navigate that life without being in the home.
I love it. And yeah, summertime, I mean, honestly, it feels like it drags on sometimes as a young parent where you've got all these kids at home and you're like, man, can we just get them back in school with some structure? But these are some really helpful principles. We recently had to employ some of these. I'll throw my own 2 cents in there. I love physical manual labor, like some projects. And right now we're working on a project in our backyard. We're digging a hole, a very large hole for a swimming pond. And we've got this whole big project laid out. I've kind of, shown the kids the vision, and man, they're out there every day with shovels and pickaxes, like chipping through this hard desert floor. But, that does so much because they have a structure. They know what to expect. There's an outcome that they look forward to, and there's short-term rewards kind of along the way. And man, they build a lot of connections just working together side by side. Not always happy, right? It's not always like easy. There's a lot of sweat and there's a lot of like frustration, but it's really telling when at the end of the day, they're very grateful for being done with the work, grateful for dinner, grateful for a time to rest. And very similar to how they are when they're in school and they have, other rigors that are demanding their time. And so we might have to get a little bit inventive in how to provide some structure and some, some opportunities to work together like that. But I love that, how it all comes back to building connections. And really that is kind of the power that we see here at Life Launch Centers. That's as we do group counseling for kids with anxiety and depression. Really, it's that group setting that they come together and are able to share what they've learned, have opportunities to practice it together. That provides that emotional resilience that we're all looking for. So
just remember to be flexible. It's like part of it is adapting and be flexible, and always, if you're doing something the same that you were 6 months ago, just like in the business model, need to make sure that's still working for your family today. And then always remember, like what I said in that one slide, the programmers, your children have lots of ideas. Tap into their brains and see how they would solve a problem. There's so much brain power within your children.
I love it. Like ask them what kind of summertime project they're interested in doing, or ask them, what
solve a problem.
Yeah, here's a family issue we've got. What do you guys suggest? How do we work together at this? I know that can be a major. It's the harder way. It's easier as parents to just like tell the kids what we're gonna do and how we're gonna do it and all that, but like you said, you're tapping into their brain power when you open the opportunity for them to have input. So,
and you're not allowing them to think and build up that frontal cortex, so this is, allowing them to problem solve. And it doesn't mean that you have to go with their solutions, but you can at least know how their brain is working and what and their ideas and thoughts.
I love that. Yeah. And if anybody isn't familiar, that prefrontal cortex, I learned about how crucial that is. That's that front part of the brain. It's the last part to develop, but its primary function is to learn how to put logical thought process before emotional impulse, which is something I think every parent wants for their kids, right? So that they can make wise decisions, healthy decisions, rather than just reacting out of emotion and impulse all the time. So giving them regular opportunities to exercise, that's what it's all about, right, Lorraine?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you once again, everybody, for joining us tonight. We really are all about stronger families and stronger futures. We're trying to get these words and these principles out there to help families in their efforts in strengthening their families. So thank you once again for joining us. We try to do this every month, and so we hope that you'll be interested in coming back next time. If you have any more questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. There's a lot of resources on our website, free resources of radio shows and other past webinars, as well as you can give us a call. If you have any questions, we're always happy to talk and work through your individual situation. So thanks again, Lorraine, for joining us tonight. And thank you so much for everyone for being a part of our family workshop tonight.